Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. My name is Morin-van, and I am the host of Strategy Talks. I am so glad that you are with us here today. If you're live, let us know. Give us a thumbs up and let us know where you're joining us from. Want to give a special shout out to those who might watch this on the replay and to those who might be listening to this as a podcast on Strategy Talks. Thank you so much. A quick shout out to our sponsor, Social Insider. They are the intuitive dashboard for social media analytics, reporting, and competitors analysis for brands and agencies. If you're in social media and you need data, you need Social Insider. So thank you so much. And without much further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my guest for today. Hello, Wendy.
Hello, Doreen.
So my guest today is Wendy Broersen. She's from the Netherlands and she's a DEI specialist. And you're writing a book, Wendy. Let's talk about that first. Let's go dive right in. What are you doing?
Well, typing away.
Yeah.
I'm writing a book about inclusion and how to get there as fast as you can. Because I work a lot around this topic and work with a lot of organizations all through Europe and even in the States every once in a while. And the one thing that really, is a problem for most is to get out of the conversation and into action, and also make those actions like last, sustainable. Most of it is, as one of my peeps referred to, more like popcorn, which who doesn't love popcorn? You've got them all flavors, but if you try to build something, it doesn't last, or you cannot build with popcorn. You need bricks and you need mortar, you need a foundation, and then you can move into an inclusive organization.
All right, that's fantastic. So most of the audience here at Strategy Talks are fall into one of two categories. So they're either small business owners or they're social media professionals, or both, right? Somebody might have a social media agency or a graphic design agency. And so when we talk about inclusion for somebody who owns their own agency, and you just put it right out there. It's not just about talking about it, but putting something in action. Can you talk to us a little bit? How do we start a conversation? Who do we start a conversation? Where do we find help? If somebody says, you know what, I see that in our industry, we're not very inclusive. Who do we start a conversation with? Where do we learn? I know there's a lot of questions, but that's really what I want to get the word out there. I'm learning more about what it means to be inclusive and what it means to, not just talk about it, but, trying to put things into action. So I would love to share that with our viewers and listeners.
Well, first of all, you have an audience that is right where it counts, right? Because communication is everything. I always say when nobody knows about it, it doesn't exist. So if you're looking for role models and you are in a perfect position to put those role models in the eye of attention, that will certainly contribute to inclusion. And a lot of people ask me, why should we maybe put in their communication, put somebody in there that is only representing 5 or 10% of the community that we're talking about. And then I always say, well, if it's not a genuine representative of the communication that you're talking about, say the normal percentage would be 30%, it is that much more important to put that role model in there, because it will attract more of of the people that you're trying to get into your organization, and so you can play a pretty big role in that, especially when you're recruiting. You know as well as I know that it's not just the company website that people look at anymore. It's what's out there on social media, on any kind of other media, on podcasts, on make sure that you have a nice representative representing the crowd that you want to be talking to. And so that's one simple example that you can do. Another one is when you use images, and we're all really fond of
Mm-hmm.
images. There's loads of stock images out there, but how about you just choose a not too slick, white, cookie cutter image out there, and choose out of a database of maybe Black people or Asian people or people with a disability. Why not? Um, that would be a significant change that you can do as well.
So I love that. So you're saying that in our images, especially if you have a podcast, before we talk about images, if you have a podcast, if you have a live show, if you are interviewing people and you're forward facing, of course, to the audience, make sure that your guest list is representative.
Yeah.
Right. So that you invite people of different cultures, maybe somebody with a disability, to come talk to you and to your audience and give them a voice. So that's one. And then as far as when you're doing ads or when you're creating content for a client, if you're in social media like I am, that, not every single picture looks like they're all from the same family, right? So they look different colors, different hairstyles, different genders, different, a lot of different races, different, people look different. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one way to do that. So when people look at the pictures, they're like, oh, that person looks like me. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a great start. Now, if you're watching and you're wondering and saying, is it harder to find some of those images? If you have a Canva Pro account, and I can attest to that, that's what I mainly use. Those pictures are out there. You just have to put the right keywords in. And instead of scrolling through the first 10 pictures, you might have to scroll through the first 50 pictures, but they're out there and they're available. And there are some stock photo websites that represent minorities, and you can find pictures if that's what you're looking for. One of my clients needs pictures of children. And we, of course, can't use the client's picture, so we use stock photos. And so pictures of children of color, and that's we're very much aware that's something that we have to put out there for people.
Yeah,
to
and also there are a couple of websites out there that have a database of free accessible images that you can just use and portray, because unfortunately you still see a lot of underrepresented minorities, and like in managerial positions, but they have specific pictures and images that you can use that show people of these minorities in these managerial positions. So it's not just a face, but it's like a Black woman with a computer, or in a definitely a corner office kind of setting. So that will also take away the stereotyping that is usually presented around these people, which is awful. It's the same with women in a household position. Why not try a guy that's cleaning the house?
And it starts with us, doesn't it, Wendy? It starts with us.
With that, I mean, stereotypes are based on the surroundings that you have when you say are about 6 to 8 years old, and then you build upon those stereotypes. So if you are not if you don't have them in your direct surroundings, you can see them either in social media, on television, on any kind of images. And if those images are diverse, then you will start to amend your stereotyping of a person who is in a managerial position. For instance, if you ask little children to draw a police person, they will draw a guy, which is
Mm.
a white guy even. So that's a bit weird. And same with the manager, they will draw a white guy in a suit, which is kind of weird because we have 1/3 of all people in management positions are women, for instance. So that's really weird that the children still draw those images, and we can influence that.
Right. So that bias is there. And so, apart from as business owners, as managers, leaders, to set the right example, when we are raising our families and talking to a younger generation, we can also talk to them about that bias, right? So, and make people aware. I mean, is that something that's part of um, DEI education? Is that awareness? Because doesn't that usually start with that? Or
Yeah, it starts with asking a lot of questions. So if you're asking me what you can do personally as a person, it's asking a lot of questions. So if you see an image of and it says the manager of our firm, and you see this guy with tattoos and a big earring in there, and definitely not wearing a suit, uh, how come we perceive that image as to be false, which is shouldn't be the case, because it just shouldn't matter what somebody looks like. It matters what kind of skills and that guy or girl has. So so it starts with asking yourself questions. If you see an image and for some reason it clicks in your mind that you're thinking, "Ooh, is this right?" And then start asking yourself why you think that image is somewhat off or out of the ordinary. Um, and the other thing is that when you are in a meeting, for instance, it would be great to make sure that the people that don't speak up get a turn. That's something you can influence right away, right? You can address that person and say, "Hey, um, do you have anything to add? I haven't heard your insights on this yet." I mean, diversity of thought usually brings a lot of innovation, a lot of creative ideas, insights that you didn't think about. So, address that quiet person in the corner, address that person that obviously is there because they're capable, but aren't heard a lot of.
all right.
That's another thing that
I
easy you can do.
I love that diversity of thought.
Yeah.
That's really insightful, Wendy. So is there do we have a responsibility? Like, where is is this a responsibility on a business owner? Is this a responsibility on every individual that is out in the world? Where do we start with this? How should it make us feel to talk and to include people? Um, where does it start? What is our responsibility? I guess that's my question.
Well, it starts with us. I mean, if you want to change the world, there's an easy place to start, and that's with yourself, right? It's the same with, being responsible about using energy, about your waste, and like garbage, and splitting it within glass and plastics and everything. It starts with you, and so a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm just a small company," or "I'm only a one person company." That doesn't mean that you cannot make a change. And I would love to see a lot of people think that way. Um, but I'll tell you what it did for me before I even started with this. I am curious as hell. So, so what I love doing is start up a conversation with a person that I don't know. And I am even more intrigued when it's a person that doesn't look like me at all. Because as a child, I was always the odd one out. And so I know that there's usually a very interesting story, or, you know, with that person. So
Right.
why not, if you're at a networking event, go to that person who's standing on its own, on his or her own, and start up a conversation. You'll be amazed about the stories that you hear, about the insights that they have, about the different view on things that were discussed, or people are talking about. And having a genuine interest in people usually brings people together, and you'll find that you have so much more in common that what you differ from. Like the differences are way less than what you have in common. And that's why I also love traveling and going to other countries and cultures and immerse myself into it. I'm Dutch, and nobody speaks Dutch in the world, just the Dutch. A little tiny bit of people in Belgium, but that's it. And
Mhm.
so I try to learn a little bit of the language, and they laugh, but they connect right away. And yeah, so be curious. If you ask a question out of genuine interest, it's not easy to offend anybody, as long as it's genuine, of course.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, and we actually in the green room we're talking about Suriname, where they do speak Dutch as well as in Belgium, and how language is definitely a connection piece. So, there were very few people in Suriname who looked like me, and I didn't expect them to anyway. But the language gave me community, instant recognition, and community. So when you go outside of that comfort zone of a language, like you are, I mean, obviously your English is great, but it's not your first language.
Yeah.
So it gives you a little bit more of a, you have to think a little bit more when you speak, but when you have that connection of language, community, it makes it a little bit easier to have that conversation as well. Yet think about, for somebody who's new to your community, somebody who's moved to the Netherlands, if we're talking about the Netherlands, who might not speak Dutch as well, how hard it is for them to go out and talk to other people. So for you to speak up and include them, I think that's a great way. And that actually is a great segue to the last question I have, Wendy, is, we talked about in the green room, and we were, going back and forth earlier with questions, but as a freelancer, right? So and there's a lot of more freelance in the Netherlands now. We call them ZZP. And so if you're a freelancer and you're going into other people's teams, what kind of role, what kind of mission can you have because I mean, I was a freelancer for a lot of years, and I probably joined 15, 20 different teams,
Yeah.
and not really thinking about DEI as something that I can, there's something that I can change or do. But you brought that question to me that was like, well, there are things you can do. And so what is something that you can do if you're a freelancer and you join somebody else's team?
Well, it's an easy one, actually. And it it starts with the question why. When I get into a new culture, because every organization has their own culture, right? And so if they do something in a way that I'm like, but aren't you excluding this part of the company or this part of mankind? I mean, um, uh, if you're talking about expressive people, or people that are just not that articulate, if you're in a meeting and and they're just letting everybody speak, and don't address the people that aren't, you know at the front of things, ask why. Because when they can't answer that question, it starts up a conversation why it's important to include and not exclude either target groups or people that work in that same organization. The question why I've asked that question so many times, and it triggers such wonderful things, and it also triggers you to think about processes and things how you do it usually, but that doesn't mean that it can't be changed, and
Right.
that change.
That's awesome. Wendy, we are at 20 minutes. Can you believe that? That was a great ending. I love that. Ask if you're a freelancer and you're on other people's team and you see that people are not included, or you ask why. Am I just meeting with you? Why are they not included? I love that question. Wendy, where can people find you
Oh, they
online?
can find me on LinkedIn, of course.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
the best way to reach me. I'm
Okay.
very active on it, and
That's
so
how you and I met.
yes.
That's
It was
wonderful.
somebody else's podcast, to be exact. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was just LinkedIn is a great medium. I love it for so many ways and reasons. But yeah, just reach out to me there. That would be the easiest way.
All right, excellent. I will make sure that the links to Wendy's LinkedIn profile is right there. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. And if you have questions, reach out to us. Let us know. We'll be happy to answer them. I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Wendy.
Love being here. Thank you. Bye.